All right, today we are diving deep into the architecture of something called superior cognition. And no, we're not talking about your grades or some academic IQ score. We're talking about the biological hardware, the very wiring that makes some people see and process the world in a way that's just fundamentally different. So let's get into it.
Have you ever just felt out of sync? Like you're watching a movie that everyone else seems to get, but you're catching all these other details in the background? Ever wonder why you just can't get into small talk or why your brain feels like it has 1,000 tabs open even when you're just trying to fall asleep? If any of that sounds familiar, well, you are definitely in the right place.
And here's the fundamental truth of it all. Our world, from our schools to our jobs to our social rules, it's all built for the average brain. It's designed for the majority. So what happens when a mind operates faster, deeper, with way more complexity? Well, the world doesn't usually call it intelligent. Oh no, it calls it strange, antisocial, or maybe even broken.
So let's start by just tearing down this whole illusion of what normal is supposed to be. We're going to explore how modern psychology is revealing that a lot of those things you might think of as your personality glitches, your flaws, they might actually be signs of some seriously high-level neural efficiency. This right here, this is the core idea for our entire explainer. We are proposing a radical reframe. What if the very traits you've been told to hide, the things you feel insecure about, aren't bugs at all? What if they're actually features of a highly advanced cognitive system? These are the silent signals of a mind that's just built differently. Okay, so let's get into our first set of revelations. We're going to take some common habits and completely reframe them. We'll stop seeing them as social failures and start seeing them for what they really are: powerful cognitive strategies. This slide just lays it out so perfectly, doesn't it? It's the ultimate what they see versus what's actually happening. On the left, you've got the world's labels. On the right, you have the powerful psychological processes going on under the hood. So let's break each of these down, one by one. So let's start with maybe the most misunderstood habit of them all: talking to yourself. Society loves to paint this as a sign of instability, right? But the science? It says the complete opposite. If you find yourself debating with yourself out loud or verbalizing the steps to a problem, you're actually doing something called verbal processing. See, the average brain thinks abstractly, but a high-performance brain, it can produce so much data that it needs an external hard drive, so to speak, to organize it all. This is a classic sign of an elite cognitive skill called metacognition. You're not just thinking, you're thinking about your thinking. You're not crazy, you're just holding a board meeting in your own head. And that brings us to the next trait: being quiet in big groups. You ever been called shy or maybe even arrogant just because you don't immediately jump into every single conversation? Well, what's really going on is a process called mental editing. While everyone else is rushing to fill the silence, your brain is running these incredibly complex simulations. You're building sentences, you're predicting their impact, you're refining your arguments. All of that happens before you even open your mouth. Your silence isn't a void, it's high-speed data processing. Okay, and this leads us perfectly to why you can't stand small talk. It is not because you're antisocial. It's because your brain likely has what's called low social reward sensitivity. The average brain gets this little hit of dopamine, a little feel-good chemical, from superficial chatter about the weather. Yours, not so much. Your brain demands information with a higher nutritional density. If a conversation isn't giving you new insights, your brain just writes it off as inefficient noise and starts to conserve energy. You don't hate people, you hate inefficient communication. Now, let's look at how this all comes together, especially when it comes to solving problems, dealing with uncertainty, or facing information that contradicts what you believe. Because this is where the difference becomes incredibly sharp. Just look at what happens when things get confusing. The average brain absolutely hates it. It panics. It needs an answer right now, so it jumps to conclusions, and it gets really defensive when its ideas get challenged. It's basically an ego defense mechanism. But a brain with superior cognition, it operates totally differently. It can sit in that confusion, it can even embrace it because it knows that confusion is the doorway to learning. This ability to tolerate ambiguity is a superpower, and it's called cognitive flexibility. It's the capacity to hold two totally contradictory ideas in your mind at the exact same time without your brain short-circuiting. It means you can say, I believe this, but I also see the real possibility that I'm completely wrong. You're comfortable saying, I don't know, not because it's a sign of weakness, but because it's the starting point for a real investigation. This skill, this ability to delay judgment while you gather more data, it's one of the truest signs of high intelligence. But, having this kind of advanced hardware, it's not always easy. It doesn't come without a cost. There is a price to be paid for seeing the patterns that others miss, and that price often comes in the form of a very unique and sometimes profound loneliness. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it the isolation of insight. Because your brain is a relentless pattern recognition machine, you often see the end of a story right at the beginning. You can sense those tiny little shifts in someone's tone that signal danger, or you can predict how a project is going to fail before it even gets off the ground. And honestly, it can feel like a curse, feeling alienated, not because you're wrong, but because you're seeing a truth that nobody else is ready to face yet. So the most important thing to get here is that the loneliness you might be feeling, it's not a sign that something is wrong with you. Far from it. It's often the direct result of your perception, of seeing the world and processing it 10 steps ahead of almost everyone else around you.
And this is exactly why you're so often accused of overthinking. But let's reframe that right now. For you, it's not overthinking, it's strategic processing. You aren't thinking in circles, you are thinking in layers. It's like being a chess grandmaster. While everyone else is just looking at the next move, your mind is mapping out 10 moves ahead, plus 3 different timelines for how it could all play out. So let's wrap this all up. If you've seen yourself in any part of this explainer, the point isn't to stroke your ego. Not at all. The point is to hand you an owner's manual for your own brain. It's about finally giving yourself permission. Permission to stop trying so hard to squeeze yourself into a box that was never, ever designed for you. Permission to stop feeling guilty because you need time alone to recharge and process. Permission to finally accept that the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you feel is the direct result of some seriously high-performance engineering going on inside your own head. Look, your job isn't to shrink your mind to make other people comfortable. Your number one task is to understand your own operating system, and then to learn how to use that incredibly powerful engine as wisely as you can. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you have a much better understanding of the machine, of the unique and powerful architecture of your own mind, how are you going to use your engine?